الحمد لله رب العالمين. الحمد لله نحمده ونستعينه ونستغفره ونتوب إليه ونعوذ بالله من شرور أنفسنا ومن سيئات أعمالنا. من يهد الله فلا مضل له ومن يضلله فلن تجد له وليا مرشدا. الحمد لله والصلاة والسلام على حبيبنا وسيدنا ونبينا محمد المصطفى وعلى آله وصحبه وسلم. أما بعد. Alhamdulillah. They say talk of the devil and he appears. We are hoping we're going to have that tonight. But Alhamdulillah, we had a very beautiful presentation by our young children, and probably to keep the devil away for tonight, inshallah. The issue or the topic of jinns and sorcery, I'm sure you're aware that probably in the last 10 years, this issue has become quite rampant, not only within the Muslim Ummah, but even within the non-Muslim Ummah, within the other traditions. I mean, it was only late last year, that the Vatican was recruiting a new breed of exorcists because they felt they didn't have enough. So it's an issue that is plaguing humanity. And there's no doubt that we are in a period of light. That's why what was always in darkness is now being exposed. And this is something that, we have to pay attention to. Time is not linear. Time is cyclical. Really, it's not linear. We have cycles. That's the way, you have seasons, right? You have weeks, you have months. So, and then you have long periods of time extending from 7 years to 40 years to 100 years, and they're all cyclical. Like we have a hadith which says, after every 100 years, Allah brings a people or someone who will revive the deed. Yujaddidu, he's going to revive the deed. So that's another cycle. And we have cycles of 40 years. And we have just probably finished a cycle of 40 years by the year 2017, and we're in a new cycle. So what has happened is, in the last few years, we have seen the issue of jinns and sorcery really becoming quite exponential, let's say, within the Ummah. And you can see that, there was a time when, if you're looking for Rakis, people who do Ruqya or, heal people and do all that, there were few and far in between. I know probably one of the most famous Rakis within London. I can't remember his name, but he's the sheikh who is normally sometimes is on Islam channel, the Eritrean sheikh. Can't remember his name, mashallah. And how difficult it was to get an appointment with him. And now you have all Rakis, good and bad, advertising themselves all over. So it's really become an issue. And inshallah, it's also part of the dimensions of life. This is one thing we really have to realize, that life has many dimensions to it. And this is the planning and plotting of Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala, that He makes life an adventure. So jinns and sorcery is mostly an unseen dimension of life. Yet, it has an effect on the seen dimension. So why do that to us? Why have things in the unseen which we can't see, and yet it's going to affect our lives one way or the other? And this is the adventure of life. This is what Allah has done, just to bring this excitement that is within life. Last time I gave a small talk here, and I said, if you look at the diversity of the things in creation, really, there's so much in creation, so much to experience of, language, culture, food, nature, animals, the terrain. There's so much to experience. Yet what is so unfortunate is the experience of human beings is so little. We are caught up in a kind of an experience where we just look like life is really a drug. Like, let's just get out of here and head up to paradise. It's not that excitement. How can that be possible? How can Allah bring all this diversity and then give the human being just one type of experience which is mostly not flourishing or joy? It's kind of just, we're struggling to get through every day. It's kind of miserable. We just make ends meet. It's impossible. We're just having a bad experience because Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala, that's not what He intended for human beings. Really, that's not what He intended for us. And if I may repeat what I said last time about the soul, and I said that, all souls were presented in front of Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala. We know that. That's where we all testify. We all said, Bala Shahidna. We all testify you are our creator. Right? So we were in the presence of Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala. And all these unbelievers today, they were all believers one day. And that time, all our children, we all stood together. So we didn't know who our children were going to be. Yet we all testified. Why is that so? Why was it that we all just said, Bala Shahidna? And I said, what state do you think the soul was in? Have you ever thought about what state do you think you were in that day? Think about that. We were in front of Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala. What do you think? What state can you imagine you are in? And just to paint the picture, I say, if you take all this beauty that is in the world, and you take all the beauty that is in the world, and you give it to someone, and now you go in the presence of that person, how will you feel? Really, how will you feel in the presence of this beautiful human being? If you take all the energy, the trillions of tons of energy that make the beauty, and then you give it to one person, what do you think you will feel when you're in the presence of this person? And it's the same way, why do you think the companions, they were going insane when Rasulullah ﷺ departed? They couldn't take it. Why is that so? Right? Now, if Allah has already declared that Rasulullah ﷺ is rahmatul lil alameen, He is a mercy. Now, you take the mercy that is in this room, right, the mercy that we have for our children, and you just give it to one person. How will we be in the presence of that person? So what about the one who Allah sent as a representation of His mercy? And that's why the companions, they couldn't take that loss. Just like we have a difficulty taking, the loss of our little one. When we lose a child in infant or childhood, it's very difficult, right? Now you take all that and then remember it's all coming from Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala. Allah is infinite mercy and infinite love. What do you think was your state when you were in the presence of that infinite love and mercy? Really, we were ecstatic. We couldn't say anything except Shahidna. We're just feeling good. And I said, did Allah remove that state from the soul when the soul came down to this world? Has He removed that experience? He hasn't. It's still within us. How come we're not experiencing it? How come we're not experiencing that joy again? Right? What have we veiled it with? Shaitan comes into play. Right? Shaitan comes into play. That's what he's doing. He's veiling you against all of that. So this is what we were talking last time about the experience, how we're experiencing religion. Why am I saying that? Is just to add to the fact that this is the diversity of life. There's so much to experience in life, and part of it is jinns and sorcery, right? So, there's good and bad in it, right? Now, what I'm going to deal with is mostly primary knowledge about jinns and sorcery. There's also secondary knowledge, which we might just probably touch upon it. But what's important for us is primary knowledge, that which we need to know because it's necessary, it's affecting our lives. And then there's the secondary knowledge. An example of secondary knowledge is when people try to find out what type of genes they are, where they're living, what kind of life they're living. And that's all secondary knowledge, but it is there. Right? So we're going to deal a lot with primary knowledge. Now, there are people, and amongst the Muslim Ummah, who doubt the existence of jinns and sorcery. Now, this is ignorance, and they should come out of that ignorance. Right? Because the Quran testifies to the existence of jinns and to sorcery. The Quran testifies to that. وَمَا خَلَقْتُ الْجِنَّ وَالْإِنسَ إِلَّا لِيَعْبُدُونَ. You we created the jinn, right? And the human being to worship us. Allah says that, يَعْبُدُونَ, to worship me. So the jinns exist. And then we find many verses which talk about the jinns, what they were created from, right? So we're not going to go into that issue of do jinns exist? They exist. And we know from a hadith of Rasulullah sallallahu alaihi wasallam, there was one time Abdullah ibn Mas'ud who narrates this hadith where they were with Rasulullah sallallahu alaihi wasallam and then he departed during the night and they were really worried about him because he did not come back until the daytime. And they told him we couldn't even sleep. We were so worried. And he said, I was summoned by some of the members from the Jinn delegation and they wanted to learn the Quran. They needed some nasiha and they needed to learn. And Rasulullah sallallahu alaihi wasallam, he took them exactly to the spot where he had sat the night spending time with the jinns. Okay? This is important for us, right? Because there are other people out there who, there's a saying, the greatest trick of the devil was to convince people it doesn't exist, right? And there are people who are out there, they don't believe these things exist. Last time when I talked about the necessary knowledge, the inescapable knowledge, and I said, Shaitaan is there, he exists. Allah said, if you deny him, that's at your own detriment, right? So these things exist. Now, when we come to sorcery, again, there's a verse in the Quran which is very interesting in Surah Al-Baqarah. وَاتَّبَعُوا مَا تَتْلُو الشَّيَاطِينُ إِلَى مُلْكِ سُلَيْمَانَ وَمَا كَفَرَ سُلَيْمَانُ وَلَكِنَّ الشَّيَاطِينَ كَفَرُوا يُعَلِّمُونَ النَّاسَ السِّحْرَ. They're teaching people sorcery. I was recently in a Ruqya in France. And every time I would recite this verse, the jinn would say, yes, we are teaching people sorcery. Every time I would recite, the jinn kept telling us, we are the ones teaching them sorcery. So, the Quran has said it and the jinns have said it. They are teaching sorcery. But what exactly is sorcery? Really, what is sorcery? Right? Do we have any idea?
Black magic.
What's black magic? What's it?
Making someone do something without getting their will.
No. Like, what is, are there components to it? Is it made of something physical? Right? We've never thought about this, isn't it? We just know there's sihr, right? But anybody who goes to visit the sorcerer definitely has to come back with some what? Some potions, which is either going to put in the food, right? Blow into the victim. And that's what it is. Sorcery really is a mixture of human elements, things from the human world, but the big part of it is from their world. Right? You can call it a weapon from the jinn world. That's what it is. And the sorcerer, if you ever sit down, they will tell you, once they have mixed whatever they're told to mix, then they're given this final portion by the jinn. Right? And this is the bigger part of it. It's from the other side. Why is it possible? We will go into that because of the knowledge they have. Right? So really, sorcery is not just a word by itself. It has physical things attached to it, which will be administered to the victim. Right? In many ways. So, it's something we're going to start, but it's good to have that awareness. Now, when we come to jinns, there's not so much we can say about what jinns are, what they look like and all that. Right? There's a lot of speculation, but we know that jinns do have an existence. They do have forms that they can take in our world, and they have their own forms in their own world. But we don't go into that world, we don't know any of that. In our world, we know that sometimes they can take the form of snakes, the form of dogs, the form of cats, and other type of animals, right? But they also take the form of human beings. All this is possible, okay? But like I said, a lot of that is secondary knowledge. What I want to come to is really primary knowledge. So we do agree that jinns exist, and we have to realize that amongst the jinns, there are good jinns and bad jinns, okay? And in the Quran, they say that some of them are believers, some of them duna dhalik, they're not believers. Okay? Some of them qasitun, some of them duna dhalik. So they say themselves. Now, if you look at Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala, when he talks about Iblis, he says, kana min al-jinn. He was from the jinn. And this takes away this argument, which unfortunately, in the other traditions, especially the Christians, where they believe that the devil used to be an angel at one point, one of the archangels, and then he was cast out, and this is what he's become. But we know in our tradition, and where people get confused is because وَإِذْ قُلْنَا لِلْمَلَائِكَةِ اسْجُدُوا لِآدَمَ فَسَجَدُوا إِلَّا إِبْلِيسَ. Now, because the verse says وَإِذْ قُلْنَا لِلْمَلَائِكَةِ, when we told the angels prostrate, فَسَجَدُوا إِلَّا إِبْلِيسَ, except Iblis, now people think he was from the angels. No, but in Surah Kaf, Allah says, وَإِذْ قُلْنَا لِلْمَلَائِكَةِ فَسَجَدُوا إِلَّا إِبْلِيسَ كَانَ مِنَ الْجِنِّ. He's from the jinn, right? So, the shayateen are also from the jinns. There's good and bad. And then jinns don't have just one type of jinns. Okay? There's not just one type, which we'll go again into a bit of detail. Now, just to clear the air again also, we know in a hadith that Rasulullah told us, every one of you has a karina from the shaitan. Right? Every one of us, every child who comes into this world will have a karina, a companion from the shaitan attached, posted to them, right? Except who? The only three people. No. The only three people who did not have any massa, that the shaitan never accompanied them, never touched them. Any idea? Surah Al-Imran. ربي إني نذرت لك ما في بطني محررا فتقبل مني فتقبلها بقبول ومبذل. What does the wife of Maryam say? وإني أعيذها بك وذريتها من الشيطان الرجيم من الشيطان وإني أعيذها بك وذريتها. So Maryam alayhi salam and Nabi alayhi salam, Rasulullah was told us this, they didn't have this. And there's one other person, Rasulullah said there's another one person, but he didn't tell us who that is. Okay? But for himself, he said his qarina, his companion from the shaitan, has been made a Muslim. وَلَا يَأْمُرُنِي إِلَّا بِخَيْرٍ. He doesn't command me except what is good. Right? Okay? So, everyone of us, but a qarina is not a jinn that is possessing us. Okay? So, this is important to be clear. Because the hadith said we all have a shaitan. It's not a jinn that is possessing us. So we're going to come to the issue of that jinns can possess human beings. Now, some of the scholars of our deen have decided to classify possession into categories, where they say you can have full possession or partial possession or just possessions of bits. That's some of the scholars, Allahu A'lam, okay? But one thing is, again, those who are debating or having doubts about whether we get possessed, okay, we need to clear the air. People do get possessed, unless it's another term you want to use. that people do get possessed. Maybe we just have another term that we need to use. But quite a number of the scholars do agree you get possessed. But what is possession? We will come to that. Okay? We will come to that. Also, a lot of what we know about how genes affect human beings, how they affect us, a lot of it will be experiential. It will be what either we experience personally or what we see in others when either we're in a Ruqya session or those kind of things. Because when you come to the Quran and the Sunnah, there isn't so much giving us really the mechanism of what is going on. So a lot of what we have learned has been mostly experiential. Okay? So there are 5 main ways that people get possessed. There could be more, but I have 5 main ways that I go with, that I know opens people up for possession. Okay? The first one is major sins. Dhunub. Okay? Committing sins. Now this is very important because one thing you'll realize about our religion, we are one deen that is very serious about what is haram and what is halal. We don't mess about. We are very serious about sins. We take it very seriously. You know, we see other traditions falling into these doubts or deciding, that some sins now should be made as something, medieval or ancient, and they don't need to be considered as sins anymore. This is a struggle you see in the other religions, and that's why you have ways of life that are introduced that are actually considered as sins. And also, unfortunately, is we have a few Muslims now who are getting caught up in some of these issues, where they think, again, we're living in modern times, maybe we need to get rid of sins. And really, I'm not going to mention a name. I've never listened to this guy very much, but maybe some of you have. And I'm not saying it as a form of hatred or anybody should go and attack him or anything. But I think it's Majid Nawaz. He's on LBC or something. Yeah. He's got problems with these kind of things. He thinks some of these things are medieval now. They're ancient. We shouldn't be. Muslims should now be in the modern age. So don't worry about this. No. Sins have an effect. Okay? Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala has classified sins for us to realize that sins is not just about Yawmul Qiyamah. Okay? Sins have an effect right here in this world we're living in. And we know this from the Quran because people from before, quite a number of Qawm were destroyed because of what? Sins. The dhunub they were committing. Right? And we know, like in another hadith, Rasulullah said, zina will bring poverty. Zina will bring poverty. You commit these sins, this will not happen. In another hadith, he says, zina will bring diseases that you've never seen before. This is the reality of this universe. It's been created to respond to these deeds that human beings are performing. So major sins, really what they do is, you have your soul and you have your body. Your soul is what we call the nafs. And this is in the realm that you have the angels and the jinns. It's called the malakut. Okay? That's where you have also your nafs. And what happens is, every time we are committing major sins, we are weakening the soul. Right? And you can take an example of here we have a room that is completely protected, and then every time you're committing a major sin, it's like you're throwing little grenades on the wall. Now what will happen eventually? That wall is going to crack. And the jinns will come in. This is not your karina now. This is the jinn. Right? He's going to walk in and then he's going to mess you up. So don't think major sins are just waiting for you on Yawmul Qiyamah. You're opening up yourself very quickly, right? And what happens is once you start going down path of major sins, they flock towards you. And this makes it very difficult for you to maintain your protection, which is the angelic protection. And one of the major sins that immediately take away protection for human beings is kufr. Kufr just makes it easy. So if people think we can live without God, well, the devil is not going to leave you alone. And Imam al-Ghazali, he said, let the unbelievers not be deluded that in their kufr, Iblis will leave them to be happy. Imam al-Ghazali said this. Don't be deluded. He's not going to let you just be happy because you're a kafir now. No. He's still going to come after you. But it makes it easier when they go into this state. So major sins, this is what it's doing. But again, even with major sins, you have classifications of major sins, which we have to be aware of. Right? And that's the way it is even with good actions. You can see with good actions, they are not all at the same level. That's what we also have to realize. For example, taking care of my mother and father and giving my donation to the masjid, which one do you think will have a greater reward? Huh?
Take care of parents.
Taking care of parents will have a greater reward, right? But it doesn't mean we don't give donation to the masjid. But just as an example, because each one of them seem very attractive as good actions, isn't it? And you want the reward. But you have to realize that the rewards are not the same. Even with good actions, right? Spending time, let's say, with your sheikh, or spending time with your family, which one do you think will give you more reward? You understand? There's good in that, but there's, you have to be able to balance these things. So in the same way, even with sins, even the major sins themselves, they have different effects on how they'll operate on us. Okay? Now, some of these major sins, I'll give the first one that really shatters your protection after kufr. So people who go to sorcerers. Okay, anybody who goes and visit the sorcerers, you want help from the sorcerers, what immediately happens is this person from that moment onwards, he's got jinns with him. And the jinns are now his companions. He's open. And what happens is, when he goes to his house, he brings them in. Or she brings them in. Okay? So what happens in that house now is, the people in that house, depending on their strength of iman, they are now under constant attack. Because the jinns are very close to them. Why? They have a host. This person who is going to the sorcerer. Because we know that. The Prophet Rasulullah said he's not from one of us who goes to the sorcerers. It's completely haram. Right? But what you don't realize is you now bring the jinns with you. You're already possessed. Now the jinns, they just need to work on everybody in that house. But it doesn't stop there. Okay, it doesn't stop there. This is going to go down into a lineage. And I'm going to cover that in the third bit of this. Right? So visiting sorcerers really is one of the most major sins that you can commit. And people should be warned about this. And if they have done that, it is important that, make your tawbah and let your family know. Stop hiding these things. Right? I know this because most of the people that I go to help whenever I do Ruqya, all their problems are lineage. Somebody within the family has been messing up with the sorcerers. Right? And I'm telling you, not in a bad way, from all the cultures that are in this room. From all the cultures, I deal with people from the Asian, the African, the Arab, all these cultures, I deal with them. So we are all in it, right? So major sins. Another type of major sin that is really opens you up very fast, things like killing, murder, right? These are bad major sins. people who go around killing people, oppressing people. This is bad. Okay? Another one is, unfortunately, we as Muslims don't have what we have to say, is, things like same-sex relationship. These are horrible for your soul. Okay? These people who are, they're trying to convince people that you're free to do what you want to do. They don't know the human nature. And you can read these things. I recommended a book, The Global Sexual Revolution. You can see the mental health problem of people who engage in all these activities. The LGBT and the gender problems and all that. I am not, I don't have any hatred or condemning them. I would rather that they realize that, while you have the freedom to practice things, you have no idea what your human nature is, and you're harming yourself. You see, what people don't realize, I spoke about fitra last time. Fitra is your human nature. And this is always given every human being. مَا مِن مَوْلُودٍ إِلَّا يُولَدُ عَلَى فِطْرَةٍ. Every child is born in the fitra. And the fitra includes your soul, your spiritual heart. Now, if you want to deny Allah, go get yourself another soul. Make yours. Because when you're denying God and His soul, your soul belongs to Him. So you're just harming yourself. Denying Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala is oppression against yourself. And the mechanisms of the self are so diverse. Inshallah, I did a topic about that, but for those who are interested, this Sunday from 10 to 1, I will be here again, and I will cover this topic of ihsan and the soul. You're all welcome, inshallah, on Sunday, this coming Sunday, from 10 to 1, okay? So, they have to realize these relationships are bad for them. And Muslims should really not fall into this trap. We have limitations. You want to do things because you're overwhelmed with your desire. We're just telling you, you're going to harm yourself. You will break down. Okay? And then you have things like raping. Again, these are major sins that open yourself very fast. And especially, I have to say this, although we have kids in here, the molestation of children. Okay? And this is from Shaitan. And that's why you can see within the occult, these are things that they like. Abusing children. Why? It empowers Shaitan. Remember, your Karina himself, your Shaitan, what is it that empowers him? Rasulullah said in a hadith, when you eat with your left hand, what happens? Your Shaitan is eating with you, isn't it? If you don't say Bismillah, your Shaitan is eating. So the energy for his activities comes from what? Your failure to acknowledge who? Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala. Now take that to a bigger picture. When we go and oppress children, what is happening? And what we don't realize as a Muslim ummah is all these children who are being oppressed and sexually abused, it is taking the ni'mah from this world we are in. So we are all losers. So let's not just go home and sleep and think it's none of our business. We need to ask Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala, how can we play a role in helping the oppression that is going on? Okay? And this is very serious because you find even in the Quran, Allah says, and the killing of the children, the infants, is Shaitan who is commanding them. Why? Why should Shaitan command them? What's the benefit for him? There is benefit for him. It empowers him. So this is something that opens up people very fast again, part of the major sins, okay? And then you have, sins of omission. Please, don't be lax about your prayers, right? About your obligations, the fact. Because what happens is, as long as you're missing your obligations, you're weakening your soul. Okay? And eventually, it might end up cracking. So don't think by not praying, nothing is happening. or by not fasting, nothing is happening. It's not just sins that we commit, there are sins that we omit, which are what? Actions that are obligated upon us and we are missing them. Okay? So, major sins opens up people very fast. Second one, of course, sorcery. Sihr. Okay? Now, sorcery, Allah says in the Quran, وَمَا هُمْ بِضَارِينَ بِهِ مِنْ أَحَدٍ إِلَّا بِإِذْنِ اللَّهِ. Right? You know, with the permission of Allah. Now, sorcery, for people who are weak in their iman and committing sins and all that, sorcery will touch them very, very fast. Okay, it will affect them very fast. It's like you don't have any protection against it. And that's why Rasulullah gave us so many, from Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala, protections. Mu'awwidathain is a protection against what? قُلْ أَعُوذُ بِرَبِّ الْفَلَقِ مِنْ شَرِّ مَا خَلَقَ. Is these knots that they tie? Right? These are protections. The end of Surah Al-Baqarah, the last two verses, these are protections. Because if you don't have these protections, you know, if you look at the adhkar for the morning, it's amazing how many of them, Rabbi a'udhu bika min hamazati shaitan, a'udhu bika rabbi yahduruni, a'udhu billahi samil alim min ash-shaytan ar-rajim. Right? You see it there time and time again, these repetitions of the protections in the adhkar, morning and evening. It's against that. So if you're weak in your iman and somebody wants to go and do sorcery upon you, you know, you're going to be in trouble. But if you're committing sins, it's even worse. Okay? And like I said, the sorcery is also from their world. And what happens with it is, once it gets into your body, it's going to eat into your soul. That's why they need the sorcerer on the other side. Because sometimes they can't do it from the other side. So now they need it from this side, and this opens up the soul. And really, I'm going to use the word virus. It's like a virus, but believe it or not, it's viruses from their world. These are viruses from their world. And they can be in your body for years and years and years, and you will be feeding them without even knowing it. So there's a big chunk of it that is really viruses from their world. And that's what it's doing to your body and to your soul, and we'll talk about the effects, right? So, sorcery, okay? The third one, environment. We know that Rasulullah has warned us about certain environments, that we don't go into those environments, right? You know, like we know, be careful about being in the toilet and in the bathroom. Like we make dua for protection whenever we go in there. You know, we know that don't go and sleep in dilapidated buildings, right? Where no one is living there, it's an occupied, you know, former industry or something. These are places where the shayateen are living, the jinns, they live in those places. Don't go in the parks at night and just sleep under trees and all that, right? The parks at night, just avoid them, because they hang around the trees, really. And this is really, believe it or not, that a lot of the children who disappear in the parks is because they grab them. And because you don't expect the child to go up the tree, isn't it? So you're thinking, must be running somewhere. They do that. So they can take them. And that's why we have in our tradition, when Maghrib is coming in, what are we supposed to do? And get the kids what? Get the kids inside. Because really, and Rasulullah said this in Hadith, you know, the shayateen are coming out. Right? Dracula. Right? So the Dracula is coming out. But it's a reality. Okay? There's a period when the sun is setting until a few, you know, quite a number, not very long period where we shouldn't be venturing outside, and then later on we can do that. But especially for the children, we have to make sure that they're not outside. Okay? So again, that's environment. And in some cultures, in some countries, you know, there are people who will tell you, like you go to some of these islands are very full of jinns anyway. And you know, you'll be told by the inhabitants, don't sleep there, don't go to that tree. Right? There's a tree there, even daytime, don't go next to that tree. Okay, it has got its owner. So, you know, they hang around some of these trees. That's environment. Pubs, you know, places where there's haram. You are endangering yourself. Okay, when you go into places where there's haram, you're endangering yourself. Okay, you're not going to get immediately possessed, but what you're doing is you're just allowing enemies free access to you. You understand? You could be strong, but you're putting yourself in an environment where you are now under so much attack. Why are you in that environment? Discourse, you know, going to clubs where there's all this haram going on. This is not good. Okay? This is all part of the environment. And then within the environment, I have what I call lineage problem. Okay, the problem of lineage. And this is where we find that a lot of people are having gene problems because somebody within the family somewhere was involved with jinns or sorcery, right? So we know cases where, you know, yeah, suddenly they're telling you, you know, my grandfather used to keep jinns, or my grandmother, or the great-grandfather, or something like that. Now, once they do that, these genes don't live. Whether it's one or many, they don't leave that family, that lineage. Now, if you know, and I've been involved in a case where, you know, somebody wanted one of the granddaughters to take over because she was about to die now, right? Because that's what they're going to do. Now, these people don't know anything about the gene. So you think this gene will go away? No, it's going to play with them now. Now, some of them do this because they believe that the genes are helping them, right? So others believe, you know, what they call Ruhani, I have a good gene and I have to be with it. All this is just so dangerous because you don't know anything about them, they know so much about you. So you think you're in control, you're not in control, okay? So once you have it in the lineage, and I'll give you cases here of where people have genes in their families and what happens. I've been in cases where the gene is molesting a young girl who's still a child, sexually molesting, right? Because this girl doesn't have any shahwa, so she doesn't know what she's doing, right? But you see it right there in front of you. Now, what has this young girl done to have this going on? Right? What has he done? What has she done? I've seen little boys, 7, 8, when I'm doing Ruqya for the family, just losing the plot. Crying and crying or scratching themselves, right? Non-stop. Now, have they committed major sins? Why are they being touched by the genes? What is going on here? And you find, yeah, it's within the family. And what it's doing is, it has access. Why does it have access? Because you're all weak. So people have to realize that. And I know many families where this is going on, that they have genes within the family and they're not taking the necessary actions. And what I'm trying to tell you is, if you don't, your children are in trouble. They're not going to leave your children. I know this experientially. Okay, so if you're not going to deal with it, and let's say you die tomorrow, your children are in trouble. So this is something that people have to be aware. Once you realize you have an issue of sorcery or genes in your family, and we will come to the treatment that you need to do, but you have to realize this is a serious issue. You cannot just walk away from it. And then we'll talk about the benefits of getting involved in what you need to do. Number 4, intoxicants. That's why they're haram in Islam. Okay? Intoxicants, what they do is they kind of put the soul in a fuzzy state. It's like driving in a fog, right? you're not sure where you're going. So this is what happens between the body and the soul when we have intoxicants, right? And now the soul can easily be taken. And that's why people who take drugs, that's what they do. I mean, if you look at the 60s, when they had these, they call it the psychedelic period, when everybody was trying drugs, LSD and all that. And what happened was they were having these amazing experiences where they were talking about visiting other realms and seeing other worlds. And that's why a number of them then went to the East, to India and all that, to study the traditions and try and understand this other world. But this was what the drugs were doing to them. And this is what you see people who take drugs, they will tell you that. They're in another world. Which world are you in? Which world are you in? This is intoxicants. That's what it does. Okay? You lose your consciousness, and then it's taken over by other beings. That's why it's haram in Islam. And it's part of the testing, that the soul will accept it. That's why they become addicted. Right? Because the soul, it's okay, it finds it, exciting to be, but it's corrupting it. So this is intoxicants. That's number 4. Okay, we should try as much as possible to help, all human beings, and especially our fellow Muslim brothers and sisters who are, caught up in intoxicants. And please, 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 people who engage in selling these things, you're working for the devil. And you're harming people out there. They need to stop this. They don't realize they themselves are already done. There's no benefit in this kind of, engagement, trade. There's no benefit in it. And this is especially for, unfortunately, there are a lot of Muslims who also sell drugs. Right? And what you don't realize is once you go into that business, you have a jinn with you now. You yourself now. Forget the one you're harming. You yourself now, you belong to them. Sooner or later, they'll just deal with you in what is worse. So they need to wake up to that. And then the 5th one, trauma. Okay, trauma is very bad for the soul. Trauma fragments the soul. Okay, people who are traumatized, they are really susceptible to the jinns. And they love that. They love trauma. And that is why you have all these wars. Right? Wars are very traumatic. Is that not true? Really? If you just hear bullets being fired, really, I mean, we saw the incident with our brothers and sisters in New Zealand, and just the trauma for those who survive. It's a very traumatic thing. And what trauma does, it kind of shatters the soul, and the soul fragments. And this is why in shamanism, and shamanism, the shaman actually in the native Indian tradition, shaman is a healer. Is not a sorcerer. The sorcerer is called brujo. Right? So in shamanism, what they do, they have this drink they call ayahuasca, which the shaman will take the drink, and then he will journey. It's a soul journey, and he will go and find what is harming the patient. So he goes into the soul world and he looks for the fragmented pieces of the soul and tries to heal this person. And of course, in their tradition, to become a shaman, once they have taken this drink, when they go on the other side, if he comes back during the training, if he vomits, he's failed the test. So it's not really a petty little thing to be a shaman healer. Right? Now, why am I mentioning this also is important to realize that possession is in all traditions, and Allah has given different traditions their ways of healing. So we shouldn't think we're the only ones who know how to do this. Right? Because in Christianity, they have exorcism going on. You can watch movies of exorcism and all that. Right? They have their ways. How it works, Allahu A'lam. Right? And when I talk about secondary knowledge, I can mention a few incidences of Christian exorcism and what happened during those exorcisms. right? But they do it. So that's what the shaman will do. He'll just take the drug and go and look for this fragmented part of the soul and help this victim. So trauma, this is what it does. And this is important. Why? Because we shouldn't traumatize children. You know, we're Muslims, we're very poor in understanding the psychology of children. Really, I can say with a show of hands, how many of us here were traumatized by our parents when we were young? We kind of bring children up and we move from the point of punishing to abusing. Really, we are poor at this. I can say this experientially. Muslims, we need to wake up and define what it means by punishing our children and abusing our children. And fortunately now we're in a country where we can't do some of these things. Really, I'm sure if they didn't ban the caning, we could have been going overboard. Well, I was in a madrasa. When I was teaching at the madrasa, these were the days when you could punish children. And the day I started the madrasa, they gave me a cane to punish the kids. And because it's mostly Africans, and this is the African way, right? And I'm sure it's still Pakistani, Middle East, still have the big cane to hit the kids. And I didn't used to use the cane. And after a while, a couple of months, the teachers got very angry. They said, "You're making us look bad because you're not using the stick." And I said, "If you want me to use the stick, I will quit." Now the headmaster supported me, said, "Just let him be." Within 2 weeks of that, in another madrasa, it was in Reading, one of the students went and reported the teacher for punishing, caning him at the police station. And the teacher was arrested. And within a few months of that, that's when they came up and banned all this caning, right? But why were we doing it? Because that's the way it was where we came from. And we're traumatizing kids. Really, there's a difference between punishing and hitting children. They're children, they're not here to be hit. We have to have patience with them. Okay, so this is trauma. Now think about the children in war zones. How traumatized do you think they are? And the women in those war zones. I saw this, what the Israeli people do. They just, fire even, blank rockets to the Palestinian side. And what happens is whenever they do, the school children, right, they have to go under the desks. And then nothing happens. And when they come out, they have all peed on themselves. Really. It's the deliberate traumatizing of children. SubhanAllah. And this is what happens. Trauma attracts the shayateen, and that's why they like the war. War feeds them. And look at all these people who come from war. Look at the soldiers, how traumatized they are. Really. Even in Israel, they have one of the biggest veteran hospitals, where most of the soldiers are really traumatized. So this is the fifth element of possession, right? Now we come to signs and symptoms that there is either sorcery taking place, there's possession taking place, okay? And number one is physical signs, okay? The physical signs that people will experience. And what you have to realize here is we are going from the field of most of the people probably have been having conventional treatment, and now we're looking at other options, right? Because we don't want people to just walk away from conventional treatments. Maybe you're just having a body pain, go and seek your help from the conventional treatment, that's fine. But sometimes it's beyond that, okay? So like examples of this, paralysis. Paralysis can be both from just, having a problem with your physical body, or it is also from the shayateen, from the jinn world, okay? And, I know a number of cases where the paralysis had nothing to do with what they were being told. And these are people who they have gone through the medication for 1 year, 2 years, all the therapies, zero improvement, and then we go and do Ruqya, and within just a moment of starting the Ruqya, boom, we see what's going on, and we know your paralysis from there. So that's just like one example. Paralysis can be from both sides. Epileptic attacks can also be from the Shaitaan. I remember my first Ruqya, when I went to see the patient, she was right there in the hospital, right in front of the doctors. She was having both epileptic attacks in front of the doctors, and after 3 days of every test that they could try, they couldn't find any solution. They were happy to give us the victim. They said, we have no idea what's going on. We are happy for you to take her. And alhamdulillah, after 7 days of Ruqya, she recovered. And for those, I remember from the day we took her from the hospital, for the next 6 days, she could not stand. She was only lying down. And when I went there on the 7th day, she was sitting in front of me smiling. I was like, subhanAllah, I didn't even realize it was her. I was waiting for her. And then, wow, mashallah, alhamdulillah. So, it wasn't really, and this was West Middlesex. They had done all the tests. They couldn't find anything wrong. They were happy to give us this car. Okay? I've had people who come to me, swollen fingers, really swollen. And he told me, one month is the right, the next month is the left. This person had been to all the hospitals that he could think of in this country, even to India and abroad, no solutions. We start the Ruqya, we just find, okay, it's the jinns who have done this to him. So you can have swellings in your body, you can have rashes in your body where you're not healing whatsoever. Okay, you have headaches which just don't heal. And you have tried the conventional treatments. Okay, these are also signs of the jinns affecting you. You can have things like twitches. So you find someone is twitching their body and they cannot stop the twitching. Or it could be their eyelid. They can't stop that. And they've tried every form of medication, seeking conventional, nothing has happened. It may not necessarily be that they have an ailment in their body, it could be from the jinn world. Okay? Then you have issues like sleep, insomnia, same thing. It can be from both sides, but they also do it. And people who have issues with jinns will have major problems with sleep. They will have major problems with sleep. Huh?
This is evil problems.
Right? So they can put you awake the whole night. Really. Okay, so paralysis, epileptics, you can have problems with your, breathing problems, right? And these are like very noticeable, where you're having really problems getting oxygen going in and out, and your nostrils are constantly blocked, or these kind of things. Again, this is from them. These are physical ailments, right? You have pains which come very intensely and you just can't do anything about it. And yet, even if you go for conventional treatment, they just can't understand the origin of the pain and how they can stop it. Again, that's a physical element that comes from them. Okay? And then there may be others that we will come across, inshallah, maybe I'll remember. Anybody has any idea of any other physical element that you think comes from possession? Right? But we might have some more to cover. The second one is emotional problems. Okay, now, we all have little imbalances in our emotions. That's life. The whole idea of this fitra is we are always trying to stay in the balance, right? So maybe today morning I woke up, somebody made me angry, which is fine. But then, how deep was my anger? Right? So, people who have these issues, what happens is what we call negative emotions tend to be very extreme. Right? Their anger is very extreme. Whether they have hatred for someone, whether they have jealousy, all these kind of things. And then another major one is their lack of joy. They just can't find happiness. They don't feel good about anything in life. Right? So this is an extreme imbalance. No matter how much they try, they just can't bring themselves to this feeling good. And it's not in their control anymore because it's from the other side. And we see that with possessed people, like a little bit of anger, they will carry it for a whole day. Or they might be very violent with that anger. So these emotional imbalances, when they go to the extreme, it is worthy of just having a Ruqya and seeing whether it's coming from the other world. Because we can strive within our own effort to always come back to balance. Like prayer is supposed to bring you back to balance, adhkar and these kind of things. But when it's not happening, then it's worthy of checking whether you're having metaphysical issues. Okay, so that's emotional imbalance. The third one, material difficulties. Right? And people think, this is not possible. Well, this is a reality. Sihr does that. Jinns will do that. So, you can't keep money. And I'm not talking about just being, you're spending money, but really, you're having a problem keeping your money. And you might just be thinking, maybe I'm just careless. It could be more than that. You have a problem keeping jobs or finding a job. Okay? You're really struggling to do that, and it's been going on and on and on. It's worthy of checking whether you're having metaphysical issues here, because they can do that. This is part of the testing. Their sihr does that. Allah has allowed this to happen, but it does happen, right? So material difficulties, even, whatever you own just keeps breaking down. Really, you're always having a problem with your car. You're always having a problem with whatever new stuff you buy. Everything's just breaking down in the house, with your possessions. These material difficulties can originate from the metaphysical. So they're always worth checking. And I know even right now that there are people who are having these problems and they're just waking up to the fact that, sihr has been done to them. They're losing their wealth, they're losing their jobs, and, that's what's coming up to their mind. So material difficulties can also come from the metaphysical. And then you have relationship breakdowns. Okay, this is where people are really having problems with their relationships, be it parents, brothers, sisters, friends, work colleagues, right? You're constantly having this, what do you call it?
Contention.
Violence.
Contention.
Yeah, just going on and on. You don't agree with this one, you don't agree with that one. You're fighting with your mother, you're fighting with your father, your children. That's all what's going on in the house. The children are always fighting each other. You're always angry. You don't want to see your mom. You're not talking to your brother for years, or to your sister. They're not normal human ways of living. You understand? Because we have been created to do what? We are social. We have been created to interact peacefully with each other. So it's not normal to just have all this all the time. I'm not agreeing with my wife. I'm not agreeing with my father. I'm not agreeing. This, you need to have this checked as a metaphysical issue. And again, these things are happening. We come across these people for years. They're not talking to each other. They don't even want to see each other. Family members. And then now we find their metaphysical issues. Now they're wondering why that's going on. Now you know, and we can explain, inshallah, how this is possible. Okay, how they end up doing these things. But these things do happen. So, it's important now to have this awareness, because most of us just go on with life like, well, that's life, c'est la vie, as the French say. Right? It's life, let's just go on. No, let's not just go on. Let's pause, and start reflecting. I'm having these twitches just going on, and you guys are telling me, well, you're just having enough problem. And I'm just accepting it and embracing it as that's the way it is. No, let me just see if there's another issue here. I'm having problem with jobs. Let me just have a look. I'm having problem with my wife. We just never agree. And Allah says, يُفَرِّقُونَ بَيْنَ الْمَرْءِ وَزَوْجِهِ. The sihr is coming between who? يُفَرِّقُونَ بَيْنَ الْمَرْءِ وَزَوْجِهِ, the husband and the wife. So Allah is already saying the sihr is intended to do that. Right? So we're just thinking, well, I just got a bad deal with her. It may not be a bad deal. Maybe she needs help and you need help. I was just joking, and I think I also did this with Faisal. I said, probably in the future now, before people get married, we might have to be doing Ruqya now, just to confirm both cases are okay. Do you think that's true? It's a good idea. Because it's really happening, I come across this so much, right? So I'm just thinking, like, probably the future generation, when I get married, it's not just checking whether they have jobs. Let's just check whether they have metaphysical issues, before we end up breaking down after a month of marriage. Because it's happening. Wallahi, it's happening. In newly married couples, these things are happening. So, we are thinking, Jinn and Shaitaan is another area. It's got nothing to do with us. It's going on all over us. It's going on all over us. And we're just not waking up to that. So please, if these breakdowns, relationship breakdowns are constant in your life, it's worth checking. And it's amazing that people will spend years going to conventional treatment because they have a paralysis or they have a swelling, and then they would never try Allah's medication. Why don't you think? And Rasulullah said, every cure has an illness except death, and another narration except old age, right? Now, if the cure is not in the physical, it can be in the metaphysical. If he said every disease that comes in here will have a cure, then what is he saying? Don't just stick to that. Don't just stick to the tablets. Maybe there's something else going on. And now Muslims are waking up to that. So it is important, just to realize this kind of signs and symptoms. And then a fifth one is spiritual difficulties. Where you're really having problems practicing your deen. Okay, sometimes it's not just you having a weakness. Like you just deliberately don't want to practice your deen. You could be having metaphysical issues also. Right? And one of the signs of people who are having metaphysical issues in their deen is, even for people who are practicing, you might find you're always delaying your prayer. You're always pushing it to the last moment. That's not normal. Okay? And the people who do that, they're always just pushing it. And then you have moments of up and down. This week, I'm in love with Allah. Next week, I don't think God loves me. I'm just let's just go find other ways of living. These ups and downs that's not a normal way of behaving with your deen, right? You have to be careful. And what they do is, they just get you gradually to stop practicing your deen. That's where it moves. And I know when people have metaphysical issues, that's what happens. They stop practicing their deen. It becomes very difficult. In some cases, it's very painful to practice. And I'm talking of pain. and they end up giving up. So if you're really struggling with practicing your deen, okay, we know sins will have an effect on that, but if that's not, just you yourself I'm struggling, get yourself checked out. That's not a normal pattern. We're supposed to be practicing our deen, and Allah has said, هو الذي حبب إليكم الإيمان وزينه في قلوبكم وكره إليكم الكفر والفسوق والعصيان. He is the one who has endeared to you Iman. وزينه في قلوبكم, and adorned it in your hearts. You love this. You incline towards this. وكره إليكم الكفر. He's made it hateful for you to fall into kufr. وَالْفُسُوقَ وَالْإِسْيَانِ, and corruption and disobedience. So he's already made it not easy for us to fall into that, but easy for us to fall into Iman. So we just have to be careful with that. And what happens with this is, at some point you also start having opposition towards your deen. And people do that now, where you're starting to challenge the notion of praying. You're starting to challenge the decree of Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala. You're not happy with these things. You're questioning fasting. You're questioning why you should love Rasulullah sallallahu alaihi wasallam. You're questioning. When you start falling into this, and I know this, I had a colleague who, and this is reality. There were times when you would be the first guy in the masjid, spending time there. And then there are times you wouldn't be praying and you wouldn't be fasting. And I was working with him and I realized, I thought, okay, he's got metaphysical issues, but he wasn't talking to me. And then one day, he just said something to me and I confirmed his metaphysical issues. He said something very horrible about God. Right? And I knew it was a metaphysical issue. And within 1 week of that, I told him, look, I can do Ruqya for you. And when I told him I can do Ruqya for you, I think the Shaitan didn't like it. And the next thing, the day I was supposed to go and do Ruqya for him, he just decided to board a plane and go to Pakistan. And he didn't come back for the next 2 years. Wallahi, he lost his job. But it was a metaphysical issue. And you do that. You'll be praying and then you'll not be praying. And then you'll not be fasting. Right? And this is one of the things that you might find in your spiritual issues where you are having horrible thoughts or words about Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala or Rasulullah sallallahu alaihi wasallam. Sometimes it's not from you. Okay? So don't go killing yourself. It's part of that metaphysical issue. So this is, spiritual difficulties. And then other signs is having suicidal thoughts. Okay, if you're having just this constant suicidal thoughts, be very careful. Okay? It's not natural. Okay, Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala did not create us to kill yourself. وَلَا تَقْتُلُوا أَنفُسَكُمْ إِنَّ اللَّهَ كَانَ بِكُمْ رَحِيمًا. Don't kill yourselves. Allah is merciful to you. Right? I'm talking, this is very experiential for me. I'm doing Ruqya to people who are suicidal. Really, they want to kill themselves. And they have families. That's what they want to do. They want to kill themselves. Right? And they've been for psychiatric treatment for years. It's not just working. So you're having suicidal thoughts. Again, that's not a very normal, it's not normal for us to be in that state. Metaphysical issues. Too much fear of darkness. Right? We have a natural fear for darkness, isn't it, right? We're all afraid of going down the alley at night. And if we're living in the villages, you don't venture after Maghrib except with one big lantern, right? And you're still turning around, just making sure. But we do have that natural fear for the darkness, right? But sometimes it's excessive. I can't sleep without lights on. Right? I just feel there's a presence around me. Yeah, that could be very true. There's a presence around you. And what this presence does, it creates that fear. It's the fear of the unknown, but it's very extreme. I want to mention just, I can't remember which of the journalists, whether it was Jon Snow, could have been Jon Snow. This was on TV, I think you can look it up. He was challenged about, people smoking weed and saying, they're going into transcendental states, right? That they go into other realms. So he thought it's all rubbish. So he decided to do this on TV. You can look it up. I think it was Jon Snow. Just forgetting which one of them. So he took the weed, this was done on TV, and they put him in a MRI machine just to see the brain, how the brain will behave in that state. And when he was in there, he kept screaming, "Get me out, get me out." And when they brought him out, he said he went into darkness. There was darkness upon darkness, and he was panicking. He couldn't see the end of that darkness. Right? So that's a reality. The intoxicant and what he meant. This is the darkness. And that's what they operate with. Darkness. They are just forces of darkness. So this fear of darkness, it has to be balanced. If it's extremely imbalanced, again, you could be having metaphysical issues. So, just have that checked out. And again, having accidents in the house, especially with children, time and time again, could be metaphysical. It's worth checking. Okay, these are things that are really worth checking. So these are just some of the signs and symptoms that I can recall that you could be having jinn and sorcery going on in your life. Okay? Now, how are they able to do this? How are they able to play around with your body? What is going on? And this is where we come to the soul realm. Okay? So here is someone who has been paralyzed. And yet now we know it's the jinns that have done this. And the medical treatment, it's completely failed. And I've been in these issues. So what is going on? Now, I'm just going to draw a kind of, picture for you to imagine. I won't say that's the complete picture. But think of the soul as the blueprint for your body. So think of a computer, hard drive, softwares, programs. So that's all within the soul. So you have these softwares that are running your arm, right? And now what's going to happen is the jinn has had access to your soul. So think of a hacker, right? He's there now. And what's he going to do? Infect a virus, right? On which software? The one operating your arm. Did you understand that? So now, on the physical side, you can't get your arm to function anymore. And the hospital cannot find the problem with your paralysis. And this is why the denial of the unseen realm. Look at us Muslims. Alif Lam Mim ذلك الكتاب لا ريب فيه هدى للمتقين الذين يؤمنون بالغيب. What's the first condition? They believe in the unseen. They believe in the unseen. Your denial of the unseen is against you. It's just against you. It's real. And now in quantum science, really, read Lote Schafer in Infinite Potential. It's a fantastic book to read. He's a quantum scientist, astronomist. His book is called Infinite Potential. And this man, just from quantum science, one of the things he says is they have realized from quantum mechanics that the unseen realm has a greater effect on the seen. And this is what the mystics have been saying. Go and read people like Ibn Arabi, they're saying that. SubhanAllah. They come to this understanding now in quantum mechanics. You know, Einstein spooky action, that's what he called it. You know, what's happening here? We're not seeing it, but it's happening. So they're even owning up that there is an unseen realm, and they call it the law of complementarity in quantum science, right? That whatever is in the seen has an opposite in the unseen. Right? And Ibn Arabi talks about this a lot, you know, the imaginal world and what exists there. So whatever comes into the seen has its origin also in the unseen. Right? So when they're denying the unseen, that's the whole problem. So when we're having these people who are, you know, they're having these physical problems, and the hospitals just, you know, we can't find the problem. Yeah, it could be an unseen problem, because the soul, like I said, is like, this is the hard drive in there with all the softwares that are running your body. And that's what the jinns are looking for. Now think about this verse. إِنَّهُ يَرَاكُمْ هُوَ وَقَبِيلُهُ مِنْ حَيْثُ لَا تَرَوْنَهُمْ. Indeed, Shaitan sees you, Iblis, وَقَبِيلُهُ, and his tribe from where you don't see them. Where is that? Is it here? Do you think they're here watching us? No, not really. Number one, they don't exist in our realm, just normally, right? In our world, the jinns just don't exist like us. This is not their world. And that's why in our world, it's the darkness that they wait for. If they take any form in our world, a lot of the time, they will be in the darkness. And then they will appear during the darkness. Not during light. But they can exist in you during any time. Right? And then for people who think, yeah, you know, there are many issues we still have to realize we have a lot to learn. We have a hadith where we are told during Ramadan the shayateen are locked. Fine? Well, go and do Ruqya during Ramadan to someone who's possessed. You'll be shocked. Really? I've done it. You'll be shocked at what's happening. So what does it tell us? You know, although we're told things, there's still more to learn. This is what I mean by there's so many dimensions to life, to existence, to experience. The soul itself has many dimensions of existence. Shaykh Shabrawi, rahimahullah, he's written a book, Maratibun Nufus, the English translation, The Degrees of the Soul. The degrees of the soul. That the soul doesn't have just one degree of existence. You know, and if you pop up on Sunday, inshallah, we'll go through some of that, understanding the soul and its mechanism, right? So, you know, so they're agreeing that you know, the metaphysical exists. So what is happening is the jinn is now patched on your soul. It's now inside of you within the realm. And that's what it's doing. Now you have to get that off you to recover that. So it's the same way you're having a twitching. And what happens with these elements, the physical one, you can't do anything to stop it. As in, I'm going to stop it. It's not happening. There's so much to be done in the metaphysical realm. Okay, so you're having that, and because it's there, that's where it is. It's happening in that particular area. So your medication is not stopping that. Okay, your medication is not putting you to sleep. You're having insomnia. You're going for your medication. Valium is not working. Prozac is not working. Right? Yeah. And really, that's what happens. It's just not working. Okay, because the problem is in the other realm, the metaphysical realm. That's where we have to deal with it. So that's what the shayateen are looking for when I'm saying, be careful of exposing your soul. Okay? Now, if you look at, should I move to treatment?
That'd be good.
That'd be good.
Inshallah.
You know, I know it's a long topic, and it's good to have as much information as is possible, because you know these are things going on, and you know, Faisal can tell you, I get so many people who have these problems, and what I'm trying to do is just give you as much information, and then you know what is happening, and take you know the necessary action that you need to take. Okay, so when we come to treatment, definitely we start with Ruqya, all right? Now that's the thing about Ruqya. Ruqya is like a diagnosis. That's what we are just doing. We are hoping, bi'idhnillah, that we will be able to be shown signs that we're having a metaphysical issue. Right? That's what's happening. But Ruqya may not be the end all. When the Raqi comes and does the reading, that may not be the end all. That's just kind of a booster. So sometimes when I'm doing the Ruqya, the signs will manifest, the signs that we're looking for as a Raqi. Right? So, like, I'm looking for Sahar. You know, and really, Surah Al-Baqarah is so powerful. Rasulullah said, you know, just make sure you read Surah Al-Baqarah at least once 3 days. You know, once in 3 days in your own household. It's a very powerful surah. And they don't like it. He said the shayateen will not touch it. They don't like it. So I'm reading Surah Al-Baqarah, then I come to the verse of Sahar. And I just constantly repeat that particular verse now. And what will happen is, if it is Sahar, there will be signs now on the victim. Amongst these signs is, some of them just tend to sleep. They just fall asleep, boom, right? When the Quran is being read. Or they will be yawning excessively. They'll be making all form of, you know, like what you see in the movies, but not extremely like in the movies, the twistings and the turnings and the noise and, you know, and other things, right, that happen. So the Raqi will be looking out for these things. But point being that during the Ruqya, some of these verses help us to see that we're dealing with a metaphysical issue. Let's say we want to find out there is a Jinn here, right? So you get to some verses which just point out to the Jinn. And as you keep reading them, you see the victim is having more pain. And really the pain for the victim is also the pain for the jinns. That's what's happening. You know, and the victim does have pain, there's no doubt, because after that they're really exhausted and they're in pain. But also the jinns suffer from that. And you know, I've been in occasions where just constant reading, the jinns have taken shahada. Really. Alhamdulillah, you know, I've been in such situations where the jinns have taken, I've not asked them to take shahada, they have taken shahada. Just by themselves. You know, and declared what they're doing and they need to go and all that. SubhanAllah, wallahi. You know, they recognize the truth. Right? Some of them are not there by their choice. Some of them are forced to be in there. Some of them is their choice. Some of them are Muslims. When I was reading, when the jinn took shahada, this was when I was reading the verses that mention the Shajaratul Zakum, you know, كَأَنَّهُ رُؤُوسُ الشَّيَاطِينِ, you know, the thorn tree in hell, that is like the head of Shaitan, and the jinn will just get angry and angry and angry. And what you do is you just keep repeating now, you just keep repeating those particular verses until the patient stops feeling the pain. And Allah, maybe you're having success now on the other side, maybe they have left, maybe something has happened. And in this instance, the jinn took shahada, and even gave us, there was one who had given his name the following day, the previous day, and he told us that one died, which is also very sad to know, because he spoke to us, but we were told he died, Allahu Alam. But this one took shahada. But as I kept reading, another one just loved the Quran, and he kept asking me to repeat particular verses. وَإِنَّا نَحْنُ لَصَافُونَ, and the jinn said, صَافُونَ, and you'll be happy. Subhan rabbika rabbil izzati amma yasifun wa salam, alhamdulillah rabbil alamin, and the jinn would just repeat after me, and he'd tell me, repeat, just repeat that, until he was happy and left. Allahu A'lam, what happened. But, so it seems like it's a Muslim jinn. He's happy with the Quran. So that's what happens with Ruqya. This is something that, the Rakis, if there's any Raki who will ever watch this, that's what we normally do. We get these particular verses and we repeat them time and time again. And eventually, inshallah, bidnillah, we are shown sign. Sometimes you might do a reading where you might not see anything on the victim. But you will be so exhausted. And that's another sign. Because this victim is surrounded by a very powerful shield. And you are trying to break through. So you can imagine just the bad state that they're in. Okay, so this is Ruqya. That's what Ruqya is for. But Ruqya is not the end all. And if you really want a Ruqya that helps, make it intense. Some of the Rakis, what they do is they just do a few reading, and then you have the reactions, and then, okay, so you're having this, go and do this. Really, there's no point of just getting reactions and, okay, you have Sihr, okay, you have Jinn. It's not the best of thing to do. Okay, I'm just declaring I never do this for money, I never do it as a business, I only help people. So I don't take anyone's money. If they want to give me anything, they give me, but I don't have a business. It's not a business for me, I just help people. Believe in that. So, if you're going to a Ruqya or a Raki, try and go and do an intensive Ruqya. Like 7 consecutive days. That's what you should have. And the Raki should try and do that. Just limit yourself to how many people you are seeing. Just do an intensive Ruqya. As much as the victim can bear, give them rest, then do it, give them this, then do it. And spend time with them a couple of days and do that. And, that's it. That's a better way of helping the patient. But what really happens is, Ruqya is a diagnosis, this is what's going on, alhamdulillah. The second thing in the treatment is, really, you should get the victim to become a spiritual person. Make it a spiritual battle. Okay? Raise your game of play. That's what you should do. Take control now. You're not going to just pray your obligatory. You're going to go into your sunnah. Maintain your obligatory. Go into your sunnah. Start doing your qiyamul layl. Increase your adhkar. Increase your salawat. Do a lot of istighfar. So much istighfar. Right? That's what you need to do. Get your spiritual battle going on. Okay? Because this can take years. Number one. And I know many Rakis will tell you, no one has ever walked in and walked out freed. That rarely happens. The people still go away with their jinns. Maybe we get 5, 6 out, there's still a whole kabila in there. So you still have to go and do your treatment. One of the things I'm always recommending is fasting. I always tell people fast a lot. And I don't have a lot of time to cover this. But fasting is so powerful. Maybe another time we'll go into the concept of fasting and how it's so helpful. But key thing is fasting is much easier, although it is also difficult. Why is it much easier? Many people cannot read the Quran for themselves. They have a problem doing that. So if you tell them, go and read the Quran as a ruqya for yourself, they're going to have a problem. Right? Some people have families. Some people are busy with their schedule and work and all that. Fasting is just don't eat, don't drink, go on with whatever you're doing, but you're fasting fi sabilillah, see what happens. So that bit is easy, isn't it? But the difficult bit is the nafsi doesn't like fasting. Right? That's why we don't fast a lot outside of Ramadan. Right? That's the challenge of fasting. But fasting is very powerful. And Rasulullah said in one hadith when a man came to him and said, give me an action of greater merit, he said, go and fast. And he told him 3 times, go and fast, go and fast, go and fast. There's nothing equal to it. Right? And for your own family, said Ali went to Rasulullah and he said, my Hassan and Hussein are not well, what should I do? He said, go and fast. Just go and fast. Your children will get better. You will heal, they will heal. Sumu taswihu, fast and you will flourish. Asamu juna, fasting is a shield. And that's what you need. You need to have your shield back. And you need to recover your health. So just go and fast. And this way you get rid of the raki. You know, you do it yourself. And especially if you have to keep paying the raki. Right? So that's a good thing to do. And then you have, you know, natural, other forms of natural medicine that you can use. It's good to use things like honey, recite upon it, olive oil, especially if it's from Palestine, it's also fantastic, recite upon it. And, you know, the other people, you know, if you go on some websites, they talk about some of these other natural remedies which you can use. But one thing I also recommend is drink a lot of water. And if you can read upon it, do that. But just drink a lot of water. Right? Because one of the things they do is they always get the victim to be dehydrated. They don't like water. So you have to drink a lot of water as part of your natural healing. I'm just going to briefly say one of the benefits of this problem of jinns and sorcery is it takes you back to Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala, but now your level of practice goes up. So in a way, it's an affliction that gives you a stronger iman if you respond in kind. Because what's going to happen? You're going to fast a lot, you're going to pray a lot, you're going to do a lot of tawbah, you're going to do all these things. So your iman, which is probably now disappearing or dissipating, now goes up. So there's a benefit in this tribulation. And we're told in the hadith, Rasulullah says, when Allah wants good for you, He gives you affliction in this dunya. Right? That's what He wants. So in these types of affliction, there's a lot of good in it. Don't see it as a bad thing. Now, the three things that you're going to have, the number of things that you're going to understand when you have these afflictions is number one, it's submission. You will be tested in your submission. Right? Because people will be, why me? Why is God doing this to me? What is submission? What is Islam? It's submitting to the decree of Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala. Because Allah is Ad-Dar wa Naf. He's the one who harms and the one who brings benefit. So don't look for who has done it. You submit. And there are levels of submission. We are not at the same degrees of submission. Some people are tested at a level where what they submit to is not what other people are submitting to. So you're being tested at a higher level. So remember, Islam is what? Submission. So just submit to the decree of Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala. Let's get out of this mentality of instant. Right? People come to me and say, how long? 1 year I've been seeing a psychiatrist, I've been taking medication. I say, okay, you were patient with all that? Yeah, okay, I'm going to give you all those prescription. Be patient. Don't have instant. Because I'm telling you, go and do this. Don't call me tomorrow, well, it's not worked. You know, you've been patient for 6 months with tablets, pills, be patient with this. So that's the second thing. Have patience. You're being taught patience. Don't try to bring yourself out of it. Just do the things you need to do. But don't say, because I've done this, I will come out of this. Right? Don't equate things. Just because we know there will be reward, don't equate things. Right? And, you know, briefly, when it comes to tribulations, if you're having major tribulations, normally, again, the pattern would be up to 7 years. Major tribulations have cycles of 7 years. And this is, you can see this from the story of Nabi Yusuf alayhi salam and the king. Right? How did Nabi Yusuf interpret the dream? You'll have 7 years of harvesting and 7 years of drought. So you have this cycle. It's a 7-year cycle where you really have to be patient. It might go to another 7 years. Allahu A'lam. So you'll have patience, okay? And then you're being raised. You're being raised. Because the jaza for a bigger tribulation is what? A bigger jaza. So Allah is elevating you. And then you're learning. You're learning what? The unseen. You're learning about the soul. Really, that's what you are learning. This thing, what's happening to me? Now you realize, oh, so this is the soul. This is how the soul is operating on my body. It's real, it exists. And as you're taking control, you're realizing that. And what greater knowledge than that? Knowing yourself. So there's great benefit in that. And then you're being transformed, but above all, you're also being purified. Because the soul needs to be purified. And every tribulation is a purification. Right? وَالنَّفْسِ وَمَا سَوَاهَا فَأَلْهَمَا فُجُورَ وَتَقْوَاهَا قَدْ أَفْلَاهَا مَنْ زَكَّاهَا. Successful is the one who purifies it. So the soul needs to be purified. So this purification is going on. And then there are many other things which, I really have to finish. I've kept you too long, subhanAllah. 5 minutes? Yeah? Okay. There's questions of, what about non-Muslims? Why don't they get possessed? It's a good question, isn't it? Right? Non-Muslims do get possessed. Okay? But even the jinns are very clever. Right? How do you think they choose who to possess? Really? If you remove the Muslim from the picture, how do you think they will choose how to possess other people?
Depending on how much sins you're committing.
The non-Muslim is already kafir, yet he's going to get possessed.
And how they can cause maximum impact.
Exactly. That's one of the things. They look at, number one, people in power. And that's how we know. A lot of these people in power, they're in occultism. True or false? That's what they're doing. They're all members of Illuminati, Freemason, Bilderberg, whatever, rituals going on. That's what they do. They're not going to allow you to be in power if you don't serve them. So that's one of the things. They choose people in power. What will be a second one? People who have influence. They can influence the masses. Example? Celebrities. Sports stars. Right? And they don't hide it. Right? They're out there with their one eye symbol and their finger symbol. Right? They're telling you, look who we're serving. Right? They put it on stage. Right? Beyonce, whatever, Lady Gaga, and all of them. You can see it. Jay-Z, whatever. Right? David Beckham. Whatever. They're all there. These are people of influence. They will take them. They serve, and they do it. The masses follow them. They put a tattoo, the masses put tattoo. They walk half naked, the masses walk half naked. Madonna is doing it, why not me? Right? So people of influence, that's how they're working with the kafir. Who else will they choose within the kafir? Interesting one, isn't it? Geniuses. From genie. Right? That's what they do. And you find that. Right? People don't realize this. Like Sigmund Freud, the father of psychoanalysis, he was a pervert. Right? What did he used to get naked people to commit zina and then you do his observation? Where is that from? That's from Shaitaan. How can you understand the human psyche from zina? How are you teaching us anything to know about ourselves from a sin? I need to teach you about this, let me kill someone. No, it's haram. Right? Do you know about Mozart, right? You know how he used to compose his masterpieces? Really? And unfortunately, fortunately, they write it, not us. There's no Muslim writing this. It's them who write it, right? They used to give him little boys, and for 3 days he'd lock himself in there with a little boy and abuse him. and then you'll come out with this masterpiece. That's Mozart. Really. Unfortunately, someone like Plato, right? And Keith Edward is a very good Christian man. I like his books, mashallah. I think he was dean at Oxford at some point. It's very, very mashallah, Keith Edward. And in one of his books, he says, one of the things that disturbs him a lot about Plato is that Plato wrote very deeply about having sex with young boys. So think about this, a celebrated philosopher, this is what he does. So this is what the jinns do. These are the people they'll work with, right? And they will tell you that. I mean, Sheikh Hamza Yusuf spoke about Jack Parsons, the man who invented rocket fuel. He said it. He wrote in his own autobiography that this man came to him and said, "You're doing my job for me." And who was the man? The man said, "I'm Dajjal." So that's where they get their inspirations from. Steve Jobs, where do you think he got his inspiration? How do you think he came up with all that? Really? A lot of these technologies from them. So geniuses, gifted people, they will go and possess them, right? And then the mass murderers, and of course people in the military, the forces, all this type of people who are ready to kill, they will do that. So possession does happen with the non-Muslims also. So don't think it's just us. But with us, it's a different ball game going on. So let's not just think it's only us Muslims having this going on. It's unfair to us. No, there is interest going on, and I haven't covered issues to do with different type of genes, and I haven't spoken about aliens and genes, aliens, genes, and genes, aliens. We need to know that. We need to know that. We need to know what's going on. I haven't spoken about how we are all being affected by what the genes are doing by working with people within the media, within education and all that, because it's happening, and they do that. I just want to show you an interesting book which people can read at some point. I don't know if you can read that title. Right? So, the occult entities that watch over human destiny. Right? You think you're alone? You think your thoughts are your thoughts? You have to realize mass consciousness is a reality. You have to realize that the media has sihr in it. I could go on and on about these things, right? So that's just an example. You can read and then come back to me. Here's an example of a non-Muslim. He's an MD, right? This man he won so many awards. He was not a minor person. And what happened to him was he came to realize at some point that some of his patients, because he was also a psychiatrist, were not victims of psychological victims. So he went to study what the Indians call bhutans, right? the demons and all that. He studied all that, and then he came to help his victims. In the book, he talks about a lot of his patients. One thing I found very common in all the patients was they were all suffering from fahsha. And that's the food of shaitan. Allah says what? يَأْمُرُكُمْ بِالْفَحْشَى. They live on zina. That's why they want the whole world committing zina. Nothing, when people are committing zina, what happens? They're cheering. Really. And they say, one of the victims says, he wants me to have sexual zina going on, and he's standing there cheering with his group. It's a good book to read. These are not Muslim. And he just passed away in 2016, very young man, right? So that's just another book. This one is called The Threat, the Alien Agenda. I have read the whole book. A lot of what these victims who have been abducted, what was done to them, for me, again, it's what the genes do. In the book, there's a very interesting patient. This man is a non-Muslim. He said, one of the things, this patient, her name is Rahmat. She's from India, she's a Muslim. She went back home to seek treatment. They told her she had psychological problems. She believed that she had been abducted. It was Jinn problems and all that. She according to her, what happened was every time they would want to do experiments on her, she would be doing dhikr. And they would have problem getting to her. SubhanAllah, it's in the book. It's a non-Muslim writing. And he said she would do these things in Arabic. Right? So this is what's going on in our world. And there is more that we can learn. I'm sorry, I've taken your time. It's been too long. I could go on and on about this issue. I hope it's been beneficial, inshallah. And please, if there are any questions, we can still come with them later on, or we can have another day where we can discuss these things, inshallah. Barakallahu fikum. Thank you so much for your time and your patience. Al-Fatiha. بسم الله الرحمن الرحيم الحمد لله رب العالمين الرحمن الرحيم مالك يوم الدين إياك نعبد وإياك نستعين اهدنا الصراط المستقيم صراط الذين أنعمت عليهم غير المغضوب عليهم ولا الضالين آمين جزا الله عنا سيدنا محمد صلى الله عليه وسلم وأهله جزا الله عنا سيدنا محمد صلى الله عليه وسلم وأهله جزا الله عنا سيدنا محمد صلى الله عليه وسلم وأهله اللهم صل على سيدنا محمد النبي وانزله مكعبا مقربك عندك يوم القيامة اللهم عجل صلواتك ورحمتك وبركاتك على سيدنا محمد وعلى آل سيدنا محمد كما جعلت على سيدنا إبراهيم اللهم صل على سيدنا محمد الفاتح لما أغلق والخاتم لما سبق ناصر الحق بالحق والحادي إلى صراطك المستقيم وعلى آله حق قدره ومقداره العظيم اللهم إنا نسألك رضاك والجنة ونعوذ بك من سخطك والنار اللهم يا مقلب القلوب ثابت قلوبنا على دينك يا مصرف القلوب صرف قلوبنا على طاعتك اللهم إنا نسألك موجبات رحمتك وعزائم مغفرتك والسلامات من كل إثم والغنيمة من كل بر والفوز بالجنة ونجاة من النار اللهم يا مقلب القلوب ثابت قلوبنا على دينك يا مصرف القلوب صرف قلوبنا على طاعتك ربنا تقبل منا انك انت السميع العليم وتب علينا انك انت التواب الرحيم اللهم علمنا ما ينفعنا وانفعنا بما علمتنا وزدنا علما برحمتك يا ارحم الراحمين اللهم فارج هم المحمومين ونافس كرب المطلوبين واقض دين عن المدينين واشف مرضانا ومرضى المسلمين واشف مرضانا ومرضى المسلمين واشف مرضانا ومرضى المسلمين برحمتك يا ارحم الراحمين اللهم اعز الاسلام والمسلمين اللهم اعز الاسلام والمسلمين اللهم اعز الاسلام والمسلمين وارحم جميع المسلمين والمسلمات الاحياء منهم والاموات برحمتك يا ارحم الراحمين ربنا اتنا في الدنيا حسنه وفي الاخره حسنه وقنا عذاب النار وقنا عذاب القبر وقنا عذاب الدين اللهم اقسم لنا من خشيتك ما تهون به بيننا وبين معصيتك ومن طاعتك ما تبلغنا به جناتك ومن اليقين ما تهون به علينا مصائب الدنيا ومتعنا اللهم باسماعنا وابصارنا وقوتنا ابدا ما احييتنا واجعله الوارث منا واجعل ثأرنا على من ظلمنا وانصرنا على من عادانا ولا تجعل مصيبتنا في ديننا ولا تجعل مصيبتنا في ديننا ولا تجعل مصيبتنا في ديننا برحمتك يا ارحم الراحمين والصلاة والسلام على حبيبنا وسيدنا ونبينا المصطفى سبحان ربك رب العزة عما يصفون وسلام على المرسلين الحمد لله.